It was a cold, grey morning when Sarah first heard the rumors about the horse. The kind of rumors that make your heart skip a beat, not because of excitement, but because of worry. Deep in the outskirts of the county, past the rusted fences and abandoned warehouses, a wild Mustang had been spotted. Not grazing in the open, as one would expect for a creature of freedom, but locked inside a decrepit stable, neglected and suffering. The photos circulating online were haunting. An emaciated body, ribs jutting painfully from her sides, eyes wide with fear. Something about her gaze seemed almost human, pleading, but at the same time, untouchable. Sarah, a seasoned equine caretaker with a reputation for rehabilitating traumatized horses, had seen suffering before, but something about this case was different. Maybe it was the mystery that surrounded her, or the rumors of her lineage that kept cropping up among horse enthusiasts. Some said she was no ordinary Mustang, that her bloodline carried something special. Sarah didn't believe in myths, but curiosity is a hard thing to resist, and empathy even harder. By the time she arrived, the stable was quiet, eerie. The Mustang's soft whinnies echoed off the metal walls. Every step Sarah took was cautious, the horse's ears twitched nervously. Her name was not yet known, and that mattered less than the trust that needed to be built. The horse was tense, each muscle taut, her hooves scraping the ground with nervous energy. Sarah's own heart pounded in response. She had dealt with fearful horses before, but fear like this, it radiated through the air, a tangible force. As Sarah approached, she noticed the damage. The wooden stall had been chewed, kicked, and scratched, a frantic attempt to escape confinement. Sarah's mind raced. How long has she been here? Who would do this? She whispered to herself. The horse's eyes followed her every move, wary yet somehow pleading. Sarah's first instinct was not to rush, to give the animal space, but to assess. There was injury too, scrapes along her legs, a raw patch on her flank, and a limp that hinted at more serious internal pain. Time felt like it slowed as Sarah knelt outside the stall, her voice soft, almost a whisper, "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." The horse flinched, but did not bolt, an encouraging sign. A tiny thread of trust had been sown, fragile but real. She spent hours observing her, recording her movements, taking notes about her behavior. Each minute was a test, a silent dialogue between human and horse. The caretaker who had called her, an older man named Tom, watched quietly from a distance. His weathered face told stories of decades spent working with horses, yet even he looked troubled now. "I've never seen one like her," he admitted, voice rough with worry. She doesn't trust anyone. And yet, there's something about her." His hands were calloused, evidence of a lifetime of manual labor and care, but now they shook slightly. Perhaps the weight of the horse's condition, or the story that might unfold, was heavy on him. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Her mind was piecing together clues, scanning the horse for signs, both physical and emotional. The way her tail twitched, the tension in her jaw, the almost imperceptible nods of her head, it all spoke volumes. And then there was the mystery of her origin. Rumors whispered of a prized Mustang, one that had been stolen from a protected reserve years ago. Could it be the same horse? Or was it another wild creature whose life had been marred by human negligence? Night fell, and the stable became colder, shadows stretching across the walls. Sarah stayed, watching, whispering soft encouragements. "You don't have to be afraid, not here." She offered a bucket of water, slowly lowering it toward the stall's edge. The horse approached cautiously, her nose twitching, sniffing the offering. Trust, she realized, would come in inches, not leaps. Then came the first small victory. After hours of silent observation, the horse took a tentative sip. It was brief, almost as if she feared the very act of survival itself. But it was a beginning. Sarah exhaled, heart pounding with a mixture of relief and awe. Moments like this, the fragile connection between human and horse, were what she lived for. She knew this was only the first step, and that the real challenge lay ahead, helping this horse heal, both physically and emotionally. Yet, the night held another revelation. As Sarah looked closer, she noticed an unusual marking on the horse's shoulder, faint, almost hidden beneath the grime. A star-shaped patch of white hair, oddly symmetrical. She froze. This marking was distinctive, and if her instincts were correct, it might be a clue to her identity. A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine. Could this really be the Mustang from the old reserve? The one whose disappearance had haunted wildlife experts for years? Her mind raced with possibilities. Identification would not be simple. DNA testing, a process she had rarely coordinated herself, would be the key. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight, she simply had to maintain calm, to hold the fragile thread of trust she had begun to weave. One wrong move, one sudden gesture, and the progress of hours could vanish in an instant. Meanwhile, the horse shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the corner of the stall. Her eyes were wide, alert, scanning for invisible threats. It was almost cinematic, the way the moonlight caught her menere, outlining her elegant form against the shadows. Sarah felt a wave of empathy wash over her. She knew that behind that fearful exterior was a creature of wild intelligence, bravery, and resilience. Somewhere, deep within, she was waiting, not just to survive, but to trust, to bond, to be understood. And so the night passed slowly. Sarah whispered stories of open plains, of freedom, of gentle hands that would never harm her. She didn't know if the horse understood her words, but she hoped the tone, the intention, the care, those would reach through the veil of fear. Every movement was deliberate, measured, designed to coax not just cooperation, but a sense of safety. By the time dawn approached, the horse had shifted closer to Sarah. Not completely at ease, but closer. And in that small movement, there was promise. There was potential. There was hope. And Sarah knew, deep in her heart, that tomorrow's journey, the DNA test, the truth about her identity, the healing that lay ahead, would be nothing short of extraordinary. Little did Sarah know, the test results would not only confirm what she suspected, but reveal a twist that would leave her, Tom, and everyone watching utterly stunned. The horse, locked in that stable, was far more than just an injured Mustang. She was a living piece of history, carrying secrets that could rewrite what they thought they knew about the region's wild horses. And so, as the first rays of sunlight touched the stable, Sarah whispered one final promise to her new companion: "We're going to get through this, together." The horse's ears twitched. A small whinny escaped, almost like an acknowledgement. And in that moment, the invisible thread between human and horse grew just a little stronger. Morning brought with it a fragile sense of hope. The stable, once cloaked in shadows, now shimmered in pale sunlight. Dust motes floated lazily in the beams, highlighting the harshness of the surroundings, but also, strangely, the elegance of the Mustang trapped within. Sarah returned early, armed with supplies, a soft voice, and a determination that bordered on obsession. She knew that today, more than ever, the stakes were high. Every small step mattered. The horse, whom Sarah had begun calling Star after the faint marking on her shoulder, was restless. She paced the stall, muscles tense, eyes darting. Star's fear was palpable, a living, breathing entity that made the air itself seem heavy. Sarah crouched low, offering calm reassurance, letting her energy communicate what her words could not: "I am not a threat." Slowly, inch by inch, Star allowed her to approach. The trust thread of yesterday had not broken, it had only tightened, weaving a delicate connection. Tom appeared at the stable door, watching quietly. He carried a small bag with medical supplies, yet he did not step in. He had learned, over decades of working with horses, that some situations required patience, not intervention. "She's a smart one," he murmured, almost to himself. "But she's been hurt too many times. You'll have to earn every inch of her trust." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. There was more at play than injury or hunger. There was fear, trauma, and possibly betrayal. The first real test came unexpectedly. Star spooked at a sudden clatter, a bucket tipping over somewhere in the barn, and bolted across the stall, hooves pounding against the worn wooden floor. Heart racing, Sarah froze, letting the moment pass. No sudden movement, no chasing, just calm presence. Slowly, Star circled back, ears flicking, eyes wary. This pattern repeated several times that morning, each scare revealing her fragility and her incredible resilience. By midday, Sarah had begun gentle contact. She extended a hand, fingers trembling slightly, brushing the coarse menere at the base of Star's neck. Star flinched but did not flee. It was progress, tentative, fragile, yet undeniable. "Good girl," Sarah whispered, letting her voice carry warmth and patience. Every syllable mattered. She began feeding Star small amounts of hay by hand, and gradually, the horse allowed her presence closer. Trust, she realized, was the currency here, more valuable than food, more essential than medicine. While Sarah worked, Tom recounted fragments of the horse's past. "She was found months ago, roaming near an abandoned junkyard," he said. "People said she was feral, but something didn't add up. There's intelligence in her eyes, like she's seen more than a horse should see." Sarah listened intently, absorbing each detail. Every story, every observation, was a piece of the puzzle. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that Star was extraordinary, possibly even legendary. The tension escalated mid-afternoon when a small injury revealed itself. Star had been limping slightly more than the day before. Upon closer inspection, Sarah discovered a deep, old scar along her hind leg, hidden beneath the grime. It was raw and tender, evidence of previous trauma, perhaps abuse. She pressed her gloved hand gently to examine, and Star tensed, almost recoiling. But then, surprisingly, she did not lash out. Sarah realized something profound in that moment. Star had chosen to allow her to help, to accept assistance despite her instinct to flee. It was also during this inspection that Sarah noticed another unusual detail, the faint impression of a brand or mark, partially hidden by dirt and scars, on Star's flank. Her heart raced. Could this be the clue she had been hoping for? Could this finally confirm what she had suspected since the first moment she saw Star's star-shaped shoulder marking? Something about the shape seemed familiar, a rare line of Mustangs, documented only in scattered records from a reserve long thought lost. Sarah's thoughts were interrupted by Star's sudden whinny, a sharp, almost urgent sound. She turned to see Star's ears pinned back, eyes wide, nostrils flaring. Someone had arrived at the stable. A pair of men, strangers, stood at the gate, curious and uninvited. One of them pointed and whispered something, their tone dismissive. Tom stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "She's not for sale. Stay back." The tension was immediate, the horse responding instantly to perceived danger. Star shifted, muscles taut, a silent warning. She would defend herself if needed. Sarah took a deep breath, understanding the delicate balance. Any external intrusion could undo hours of trust building. She moved closer to Star, whispering reassurances, letting the horse feel the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Slowly, the men backed away, sensing they were unwelcome. Star relaxed just a fraction, but the incident left a lingering unease. By evening, Sarah decided it was time for the next step, preparation for the DNA test. The thought alone caused Star to tense once again, but Sarah had learned that predictability and gentle repetition helped. She let Star sniff the collection kit, handled it delicately, never forcing her. Hours passed, with only incremental progress. And then, something unexpected happened. Star leaned into Sarah's touch. Not completely, not yet, but enough to signal a subtle breakthrough. In that moment, Sarah felt a rush of emotion, relief, awe, and a profound connection. This was no longer just about rescuing a horse. This was about forming a bond, about proving to a creature that humans could be trustworthy, kind, and protective. Nightfall brought quiet reflection. Sarah cleaned the stall, tending to minor wounds, and prepared Star for a safe night. She whispered softly, almost reverently, "Tomorrow, we'll find out who you really are. And whatever the truth, I promise you, you'll never be alone again." Star responded with a soft nicker, her ears flicking toward Sarah, a small but powerful sign of acknowledgement. As Sarah left for the night, she couldn't shake the growing anticipation. The DNA test would reveal more than just lineage, it might confirm a story she had long hoped was true, a twist in Star's journey that no one could have predicted. And in that anticipation lay suspense, hope, and an undeniable sense of wonder. Little did anyone know, the next day's revelation would not just uncover Star's identity, it would challenge everything Sarah thought she knew about wild horses, their history, and the profound bonds they could form with humans who approached them with patience and love. The morning sun streamed through the broken slats of the stable, dust dancing in golden beams. Sarah arrived earlier than usual, anticipation and anxiety coiling in her chest like a tightly wound spring. Today was the day of the DNA test, the moment that could confirm everything she had been suspecting about Star. Every step toward the stall felt heavier, loaded with potential. She knew that whatever the results revealed could change Star's life, and perhaps even her own. Star was restless as always, her powerful muscles coiled with tension. But something in the morning light seemed to calm her slightly. She nickered softly when Sarah approached, ears flicking forward in recognition. Sarah knelt beside her, whispering gently, "It's okay, Star. This is just a little test. You're safe." Star's eyes, dark and intelligent, seemed to study her, as if weighing the promise of safety against a lifetime of betrayal. The collection process was delicate. Sarah handled Star's menere and flank with practiced care, brushing aside dust and grime to collect the sample. Every movement was slow, deliberate, designed to reassure. Star shifted slightly but did not resist, not fully. She was beginning to understand that Sarah's presence was consistent, that her touch was gentle, and that her intentions were pure. It was a victory born of patience and empathy, small but monumental. Once the sample was secured, Sarah carefully stored it, preparing to send it to the lab. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Tom, standing quietly at the back of the stable, broke the silence. "You know," he said, voice low and thoughtful, "whatever the results show, you've already given her something incredible. Trust. Hope. A reason to survive." Sarah nodded, emotions welling up. Tom's words resonated. He understood the stakes not just in terms of lineage, but in the bond forming before their eyes. The hours dragged. Sarah couldn't stop herself from watching Star, cleaning the stall, brushing her menere, whispering words of comfort. Each moment of care deepened the connection between them. Star was no longer just a scared, injured Mustang. She was a creature of remarkable resilience, intelligence, and spirit. Sarah could feel the subtle shifts in behavior, the tiny flickers of trust that made her heart soar. When the call from the lab finally came, Sarah's hands shook. She pressed the phone to her ear, barely able to breathe. "Hello? Yes, this is Sarah Miller." The lab technician's voice was calm, professional, yet carried an undercurrent of excitement. "The results are in. We've confirmed her identity." Sarah's breath caught. Every instinct, every suspicion, every detail she had observed in Star's markings and behavior had led her to this moment. She's part of a very rare line of wild Mustangs," the technician continued. "In fact, her lineage traces directly back to the legendary Mustang herds that were thought to have vanished decades ago. Her genetics are nearly identical to a documented herd that was believed extinct." Sarah's mind raced. The implications were staggering. Not only had she rescued a severely injured horse, but she had discovered a living link to history, a living piece of a story that many thought lost forever. Sarah couldn't contain herself. That's incredible," she whispered. "So she's unique?" The technician confirmed. "Absolutely. She's one of a kind, and her survival is significant both scientifically and historically." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, not just for Star, but for the immense responsibility she now carried. This horse was extraordinary in every sense. She hung up the phone, turning to Star with trembling hands. "You're amazing," she said softly. Star looked up at her, nostrils flaring, ears flicking forward, as if she sensed the weight of the words. For the first time, Sarah felt a sense of awe that went beyond rescue. This was history walking on four legs, a reminder of the wild's resilience and the profound bond that could form between human and horse. The revelation, however, brought new challenges. Word of Star's identity would attract attention: scientists, conservationists, even media. Sarah knew that every person with a claim or interest could disrupt the fragile trust they had built. For now, Star was fragile, both physically and emotionally, and exposure to too many strangers could undo everything. The stakes had grown higher. Her mission was no longer just about rehabilitation, it was about protection, care, and safeguarding a living treasure. Tom looked at Sarah with a mixture of pride and concern. "You've handled her well," he said. "But now the real work begins. This horse, she's special in ways most people won't understand. They'll want to see her, study her, maybe even own her. You have to be careful. Sarah nodded silently, her mind already racing through strategies to protect Star, to maintain trust, and to allow her to heal on her terms. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Sarah decided to push gently into a new phase, allowing Star to leave the stall for a short, supervised walk. The tension was palpable. Star had never left the confined space in months. The world outside was unknown, unpredictable, and frightening. Sarah approached slowly, whispering reassurances. I'll be right here. Step by step. Star hesitated, ears flicking, hooves shifting nervously. And then, with a tentative step, she moved forward. The first steps outside were halting. Each movement was cautious, measured, testing boundaries. Sarah's heart pounded as she mirrored her movements, staying close, offering gentle touches when Star allowed. They moved together, a delicate dance of trust and patience. Tom watched silently, admiration evident in his eyes. Look at her, he whispered. She's beginning to believe she can be safe again. As they reached the edge of the pasture, Star paused, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. She sniffed the air, sensing freedom she had long forgotten. And then, almost imperceptibly, she exhaled, lowering her head as if acknowledging her own strength and survival. It was a quiet, cinematic moment. Power, fear, history, and trust all intertwined in the slender form of a once-abandoned Mustang. Sarah stood a few feet away, tears running silently down her cheeks. She whispered, "You've made it this far, Star. And together, we'll go further." Star turned her gaze toward her, softening slightly, and nudged Sarah gently with her nose, a small, powerful gesture of connection. In that instant, Sarah felt the full emotional weight of the day, relief, awe, and a deep, unshakable bond. But the night brought new unease. As Sarah prepared to leave, she noticed distant lights approaching the stable, vehicles she did not recognize. Her chest tightened. Could it be people who had heard about Star's lineage? People with intentions that were not aligned with trust or care. The stakes had escalated further, and tomorrow promised challenges even greater than those they had faced today. Yet, in the quiet of the stable, with Star resting her head near Sarah's knee, there was a fragile sense of peace. The horse had survived, had begun to trust, and had revealed her extraordinary identity. Sarah understood that the road ahead would be filled with obstacles, but she also knew that together, they were stronger than the fear, stronger than the past, and stronger than the unknown. And so, as the first stars appeared in the sky, Sarah whispered once more to Star, "No matter what comes, we face it together." Dawn broke with an uneasy stillness. Sarah arrived at the stable earlier than ever, her senses alert. The night had been restless, images of the approaching vehicles haunted her sleep. She knew that with Star's rare lineage now confirmed, the horse's life would attract attention from people who might not have her best interests at heart. But fear alone would not guide her actions. Careful strategy, empathy, and unwavering patience were required. Star was awake, pacing in the stall, ears flicking, nostrils flaring at every shadow. She had sensed the tension in Sarah, absorbing it like a living barometer. Today, their bond would be tested, not just by fear and trauma, but by outside forces that could challenge the fragile trust they had built. Sarah knelt beside her, brushing Star's mane gently, whispering softly, "It's okay, Star. I'm here. Nothing will hurt you." The horse responded with a tentative nicker, but the underlying tension remained, her body coiled like a spring. By mid-morning, the first signs of intrusion appeared. Vehicles approached along the dusty road, the low rumble of engines carrying across the field. Sarah's heart raced. She knew these visitors were likely drawn by news of Star's extraordinary identity. Some might come with good intentions, but others could be driven by greed, curiosity, or reckless fascination. She called Tom on the phone, his voice calm but firm. "We need to manage access. No one gets close without supervision. Star can't handle strangers right now." Tom agreed immediately, his decades of experience guiding every word. The first group arrived, a pair of conservationists and a journalist. They intended to document Star, eager to capture a story of historical and biological significance. Sarah met them at the gate, maintaining authority and calm. "Star is under recovery," she said firmly. "She is not to be disturbed." Any interaction requires my supervision. The visitors nodded, somewhat reluctantly, understanding the invisible line that could not be crossed. Even under careful supervision, the horse's anxiety was palpable. Her muscles twitched, tail swishing in agitation, hooves scraping the ground. Sarah stayed close, maintaining gentle contact, whispering reassurances. "I've got you," she murmured. "Step by step." Star exhaled sharply, a signal that she was processing both the excitement and the fear. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Sarah noticed Star's gaze flick toward a patch of sunlight streaming through the barn door. Something about the warmth, the light, seemed to anchor her attention, offering a small sense of security amidst the chaos. Encouraged, Sarah guided Star outside again, this time letting her explore a small portion of the pasture while the visitors observed from a safe distance. The horse's first steps were tentative, measured, but with each forward movement, her confidence grew. Sarah's heart soared. "You're amazing," she whispered. "Look at you, step by step." Star's ears flicked back toward Sarah, eyes bright with curiosity. The tension in her body softened slightly, a clear sign that she was beginning to reclaim her confidence. For the first time, it seemed as though the horse understood that the outside world did not have to be a threat, that freedom could coexist with safety and trust. But just as relief began to settle, a sudden, alarming sound shattered the calm, a loud, metallic crash from the direction of the junkyard where Star had originally been found. Star bolted instinctively, muscles rippling, nostrils flaring with fear. Sarah ran after her, heart pounding, calling her name. Star's powerful legs carried her across the field, adrenaline pushing her forward even as panic threatened to overtake her. It was a race against instinct and trust. Sarah knew that if Star ran too far, the fragile bond they had built could unravel in an instant. She slowed, letting her voice carry through the morning air, gentle but firm, steadying. The morning air was thick with tension as Star bolted across the field, muscles taut, nostrils flaring. Sarah sprinted after her, voice steady yet urgent, calling her name with every ounce of energy she had. "Star! It's okay. Come back to me." The horse's panic was raw and primal, the culmination of months of fear, neglect, and trauma. But within that fear was also courage, a spark that Sarah knew could not be extinguished. Step by step, Sarah let Star lead, never forcing, never chasing. Instead, she mirrored her movements, staying close but not threatening, projecting calm assurance. Slowly, the wild tension began to shift. Star's breathing, though rapid, began to synchronize with Sarah's voice, her ears flicking back in recognition. The invisible thread of trust they had woven over weeks began to stretch taut, anchoring Star in a moment of connection that defied instinct. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Star slowed, muscles quivering with adrenaline. Sarah knelt at a safe distance, extending her hand gently, speaking softly. "You're safe now, you're okay." Star paused, nostrils flaring, then in a breathtaking gesture, she stepped closer, her nose brushing Sarah's outstretched hand. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she whispered, "I knew you could do it. You're amazing, Star." It was in that moment that the full weight of their journey hit Sarah, the months of fear, the painstaking trust building, the fragile hope that had carried them through countless small victories. Star lowered her head, eyes soft, a quiet nicker of acknowledgement escaping her lips. The bond between human and horse, forged in patience, empathy, and unwavering care, was now undeniable. The DNA test, though confirming Star's extraordinary lineage, had not been the pinnacle of this story. That honor belonged to this very moment, proof that even a horse broken by fear and neglect could reclaim her spirit when met with compassion and patience. Tom, watching from a distance, nodded in quiet approval. "You did it," he said softly. "She trusts you. That's the real miracle." Word of Star's identity had spread, but Sarah made a choice: no public displays, no uncontrolled exposure. Instead, she worked with conservationists to ensure Star's safety, her rehabilitation, and eventual freedom in a controlled sanctuary where she could thrive. The initial media frenzy was redirected into educational efforts, teaching about wild Mustangs, the importance of trust in rehabilitation, and the profound bond between humans and horses. Over the following weeks, Star's physical and emotional recovery accelerated. Her scars healed, her muscles strengthened, and her once frightened eyes began to shine with curiosity and intelligence. She explored the sanctuary with cautious confidence, learning that the world could be both safe and beautiful. Sarah remained by her side, guiding her, whispering reassurances, and celebrating every small victory. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the pasture in warm gold, Star approached Sarah without hesitation. She nuzzled her hand, and Sarah, overwhelmed with emotion, laughed through tears. "You've come so far," she whispered. "You're not just a survivor, you're a symbol of hope." In that moment, the significance of Star's journey was clear. She was no longer just a rescued horse, she was a living testament to resilience, patience, and the transformative power of trust. Then came a final, unexpected twist. While reviewing historical records related to Star's lineage, a wildlife researcher noticed something astonishing. Star's genetic markers suggested that she was not just part of a rare line of Mustangs, she was a direct descendant of one of the original wild herds brought to North America centuries ago. This revelation elevated her significance from remarkable to historically invaluable. Sarah, Tom, and the team realized that Star was more than a story of rescue, she was a living piece of history, a bridge between the past and the present. The story spread slowly, told through carefully curated narratives and educational programs. Star became a symbol, not just of rare genetics, but of the extraordinary bond possible between humans and horses. Sarah's careful stewardship ensured that Star remained safe, respected, and free to express her natural spirit. Visitors to the sanctuary, guided by Sarah, observed the relationship between horse and human, learning that patience, empathy, and trust could heal even the deepest wounds. Months later, Sarah stood at the edge of the pasture, watching Star gallop freely, menere flowing, muscles rippling under the sun. The horse had transformed completely, from a fearful, injured creature locked in a stable to a confident, radiant symbol of wild majesty. And yet, despite her freedom, Star remained connected to Sarah, returning often for quiet nuzzles, soft whinnies, and moments of companionship that transcended words. Sarah smiled through tears, whispering softly, "You found your freedom, Star. And I found something too, a reminder of why I do this, why I never give up on those who are broken, afraid, or forgotten." Star responded with a gentle nicker, a sound that carried gratitude, trust, and the quiet triumph of survival. In the end, Star's story was not just about rescue or rare lineage, it was about resilience, empathy, and the extraordinary bond between humans and horses. It was about hope prevailing in the face of fear, love in the face of trauma, and trust growing where suspicion once reigned. And as the sun set over the sanctuary, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Sarah knew that this journey, though complete in many ways, would echo forever in both their hearts. For viewers, Star's story offered more than emotional resonance, it carried subtle inspiration, to care for the vulnerable, to trust patiently, and to believe in the extraordinary connections possible between beings, human or animal. And in a quiet, understated way, it encouraged the audience to reflect, share, and cherish the creatures around them, because sometimes, the smallest acts of patience and compassion could transform not just a life, but history itself. The sanctuary continued to thrive, Star remained under careful care, and Sarah documented the journey, creating a narrative that would educate and inspire generations. And through it all, Star ran freely, unshackled by fear, carrying the story of survival, trust, and love wherever her hooves touched the earth.